Hello, my name is Matthias and welcome to the FPL Scope and the FPL eye test for game weeks 14 through 16. So we just had a week of 3 separate game weeks within the span of 7 days, and that means that I wasn't able to do my regular scheduled content on this channel, where usually I do the FPL eye test after every weekend, where I look back at that weekend's matches in the Premier League from an FPL perspective. But seeing as we've had 3 game weeks now, I have to sort of wrap it all up into 3 games and just talk more generally about each team and how they have fared through these 3 games and what their current trend are. If they are actually trending upwards, they're looking better than usual, or if they're trending downwards, looking worse than usual, or if there's any other weird things that I've noticed from the past 3 game weeks, which happened in very short time frame. So yeah, let's just go straight into it and look at all the teams. We're going to go through it in alphabetical order. There will be some teams that are really interesting, some teams that are not so interesting, so I might go a bit longer with certain teams, but I'm going to try to keep it as brief as possible. That's easier for me to say. Try to keep it as short as possible, and yeah, just basically go from there. First, we go with Arsenal, and they've managed 2 wins and 1 loss through the 3 game weeks that they've had this past week. The 1 loss came against Aston Villa, which is a really tough game away from home. Aston Villa have been just fantastic at home, and yeah, Arsenal were the last team to beat them at Villa Park. They could have beaten them this time around as well, but they just didn't have enough in terms of the finishing touches to win this match. They also conceded pretty early, which was sort of makes sense for why the XG ended up as it is, because Aston Villa were defending a lead and Arsenal were chasing a draw or a win, and that means that usually the team that's leading early on will not get quite as much XG as they probably would have usually, as we'll get to when we could talk about Aston Villa next. But when it comes to Arsenal in general, I think they've looked really good. As you can see from the expected goals, 6.55 expected goals and only 1.79 expected goals conceded. They conceded 3 goals against Luton, which was really crazy considering it was only 0.51 XG that Luton produced in that game. They were also really good, much better than the 2-1 scoreline suggests against Wolverhampton. And I think Arsenal in general just have hit their stride now. They're actually looking to round up into form now, within that period where usually Man City is the team that is basically just taking the Premier League by the horns and just dominating. But I think Arsenal are actually the team that are going to do that this season. It just looks like they are back to their best, and even though they've struggled a bit in these matches, they should have beaten Luton more easily. They had to wait for a late Declan Rice winner to win that game, and they also lost against Aston Villa. Those are like weaknesses for sure for Arsenal. They do lack that super number 9 striker, but Gabriel Jesus in his own right is a really good player, and he's back, and Ødegaard is back, and Martinelli is fit, Saka is fit. Havertz is actually looking really good now all of a sudden. He could have actually been the standout FPL option that I've chose from Arsenal from these 3 game weeks, but I think Ødegaard has just been a step above everyone else, especially in the Wolverhampton game. He was just absolutely fantastic and looked back to his best from last season. So yeah, I think Arsenal in general are looking really interesting with the band back together, everyone back fully fit. And with pretty easy fixtures coming up pretty soon as well, I'm pretty excited to have triple Arsenal, potentially 2 offensive Arsenal players, now that both Son and Salah will probably go for, or we know that they will be away for a couple game weeks for African Cup of Nations and the Asian Cup as well. So yeah, I think that's a good jumping on point for Ødegaard in a couple game weeks. I think Arsenal just look good in general, and I think tripling up on Arsenal is going to be pretty viable pretty soon as well. So yeah, definitely a team to look out for. Sort of shortchanged a little bit in these past 3 games, but they still managed to get 2 wins. So yeah, hats off to Arsenal. They are looking really good, and really excited to see what's next with Arsenal in general this season. I still have them as title favorites, or I think they're going to win the league this season. I said that before the season, and I'm sticking with that notion still to this day. Then we have another team that has been really good this season, and another team that I had really high hopes for this season, and that's Aston Villa, and they've just been absolutely fantastic at home. They've had 3 really tough matches now, because Bournemouth away is a really tough match right about now, because we're going to get to Bournemouth pretty soon as well. They're really good at the moment. But then playing against Man City and Arsenal at home and beating them both 1-0, it's just absolutely fantastic. Obviously, this happened without Matty Cash and Moussa Diaby, who have been the favored FPL picks alongside Ollie Watkins. Watkins in his own right hasn't really done too much in these games. He obviously had that major haul against Bournemouth where he scored the equalizer pretty late in the game, after everyone basically sold him for a player that we're going to talk about when we got to Liverpool. But Watkins has been decent, but Bailey especially has just been a huge standout these past 3 game weeks. He just looks absolutely fantastic. We know what kind of level he has from Leverkusen. We know that Diaby actually had a better level at Leverkusen than Bailey, but for now Bailey is looking like the better prospect in FPL for Aston Villa as well. Also defensively, they've just really shored up their defense with Cash going out of the team and them just having Diogo Carlos back, playing 100% of the matches basically. Konsa is so vital to them. Obviously, Pau Torres has been amazing for Aston Villa this season as well. They're just really solid all around the park, and Douglas Luiz as well in the midfield had a couple of chances to score some goals as well in the Man City game where they just absolutely dominated Man City, which was really crazy to see. Man City had those 2 big chances for Haaland in the 11th minute early on in the game, and then from that point on, Aston Villa were just all over them the whole game and deservedly won the game as well. So again, Aston Villa just looking really, really good. Obviously, if you look at their expected goals and expected goals conceded, you could say maybe they were a bit lucky to get 7 points in these 3 games, but at the same time, they're also facing really tough opposition. And like I said with the Arsenal game, they took the early lead there and just basically were trying to secure the lead. And they were really tired after playing Man City and just giving it all against Man City. So I think Aston Villa are looking really good as well. It's just, when it comes to FPL options, it's basically just Watkins or bust, I guess. I mean, Pau Torres is a decent option. He's 4.7 now in total price. Pretty much the same price as Matty Cash at this point, and Cash is someone that you should definitely sell because he just doesn't seem to be in the starting lineup anymore. He's basically dropped out of the team, and they're looking better for it. So yeah, Matty Cash is sort of out of there. Diaby as well, kind of disappointing to see him tailor off a bit as well. But yeah, Aston Villa are sort of a team that people have jumped off on a little bit now because they've had those tough matches against City and Arsenal. But they still managed to get the 3 points in both of those games. So yeah, really well done from Aston Villa, and they do have some interesting FPL options. It's just basically Watkins who's like the main guy that you probably are looking to get back at this point if you sold him, or if you never had him this season like I haven't. You definitely want him for game week 18 when he's the best captaincy option against Sheffield United at home. I think that's a really good fixture still for Aston Villa, obviously. So yeah, Aston Villa looking really good as well. Next up, another team that has been really good, like I mentioned, Bournemouth. They did play Aston Villa in Game Week 14 and looked really good. Probably should have won that game, had the lead up until pretty late. As you can see from the expected goals as well, 2.02 for Bournemouth, only 0.68 from Aston Villa. So Bournemouth have just really turned a corner now with Andone Areola. And we've seen in the past couple of weeks that they've sort of been better and better as this season has gone along. There were rumors earlier in the season that Areola was basically just about to be sacked earlier in the season, but I'm really happy to see that they stuck with him, and it's actually working out now. They're looking like a much better team. As you can see from the expected goals conceded, they create so much more than they concede, and that's against teams like Man United and Aston Villa, who have at times this season at least been really good. So, or maybe not Man United, but still, 2 straight wins as well away from home without conceding a goal. Senesi scoring in both games as well. I should probably mention him, but I think Solanke is the more like viable pick going forward because they have really good fixtures now. From game week 17 onwards, they have a couple great fixtures, 17, 18, 19. I think they have 3 really good fixtures. Solanke is also another one on top of Watkins, another player that a lot of people are looking to bring in because there are a lot of underperforming strikers that we do have in our squads. And Solanke is someone who is really cheap. He's on penalties, even though Bournemouth never get penalties. And he's just involved in everything that Bournemouth do as well. He was in such really good positions against Man United as well, scored an early goal, was really involved in the game in general, just didn't get those extra points that he should have probably had. He's been a bit unlucky when it comes to points lately, but in terms of like proving his worth as an FPL pick, I think he's just been fantastic. So he's definitely someone that I'm thinking about bringing into my team myself as well. So yeah, Solanke is really good. Also have to mention Marcus Tavernier, who's on most set pieces for them. He plays pretty much every game. He didn't play against Crystal Palace. He was sort of rested in that game. But he is such a vital part for Bournemouth, and he showed that against Man United. He provided the 2 assists, one from a corner and one from a cross. He's also a really good player. So you have a really good variety of options when it comes to Bournemouth. They also have the goalkeeper Neto, who's back in goal after a slight like injury concern back in like game week 12, game week 13. You have Senesi obviously in defense, who's only 4.4 I think now. He went up in price. He was 4.3 actually, so he was just a really fantastic option that we didn't really see coming because scored in 2 games in a row, keeping a clean sheet in 2 games in a row. 14 points and 15 points in those 2 game weeks, 29 points over 2 game weeks, just absolutely fantastic. If you had him in any of those game weeks, congratulations, because you're probably doing really well in FPL currently. So Bournemouth are also really good. Moving on to a team that is not that good is Brentford. Obviously, they're really struggling now with Brian Mbeumo also being injured. It seems like he's going to be injured until the African Cup of Nations, which is in game week 21, or just thereabouts. Just about, maybe they get 1 game or 2 from him before he leaves. But speaking of Game Week 21, that's actually when they get Ivan Toney back as well, because he's suspended up until the 17th of January. And I think they play in Game Week 21. They play on the 20th of January. So Toney should, by all accounts, be able to go straight back into the lineup there. And that might also be the game week where we actually get the double game week that we've been looking for with Brentford, where they play Man City as well. That's probably not going to end up in Game Week 20 after all, but maybe Game Week 21. The other possibilities are Game Week 24 or Game Week 25. I'm thinking Brentford might want it to be Game Week 25 because that's when they'll have Mbeumo and Wissa back on top of having Toney. So I think they will push for the game to be set in Game Week 25, but we don't really know for sure yet. But yeah, speaking of Toney, I think he's going to go back straight into the lineup. He has been training with Bournemouth with Brentford since September. So I think he should be ready to go. He should just be fully fit, basically. Maybe he'll be like eased into the matches. Maybe he'll be subbed on, play 45 minutes here and there. Maybe he'll play 60 minutes and get subbed off. I don't know, but I feel like Toney is one of those like Iron Man sort of guys who's going to be all the way in shape and ready to play, assuming he stays with Brentford. That's the only other thing, because the game is obviously Game Week 21 is in January, and that's when Toney might actually leave for a better team. Someone like Arsenal, for example, like I mentioned, need that striker. Maybe he leaves for a different team, but he's going to be a good option whether he stays with Brentford or if he goes to a different Premier League team. So yeah, he's definitely someone to take note of. And there's a reason why I'm talking a lot about Toney, because there's not really much to talk about when it comes to Brentford currently, because with Mbeumo out, they don't really have anything. Shannon Baptiste, he's basically the only standout FPL option because of his price. He's like 4.3, I think, probably the cheapest midfielder you can get. So as a placeholder midfielder who's actually playing quite a bit now and actually has like decent-ish goal threat, like he has been one of the better performing players for Brentford. Maybe he's someone you want to have, but currently you don't really need the money because Haaland is going to be out injured now, most likely. We're going to get to that when we talk about City. And also Salah is leaving for African Cup of Nations, and Son is also leaving. Trippier is looking like a worse prospect now, especially after his two good fixtures now come up in game week. Well, he's suspended now for game week 17, but game week 18 and game week 19, Trippier will have some good fixtures, and then after that he'll have pretty terrible fixtures. So I don't think money will be an issue, so I don't think Baptiste will really be a fixture either. So let's just move on from Brentford, who have really struggled without Mbeumo. But as you can see from the expected goals, actually, they racked up quite a bit against Luton. So that should tell you something about Luton and how bad they are away from home, especially. So yeah, we'll get to Luton pretty soon as well. We have Brighton, who are just consistently inconsistent, as we've seen this whole season. The same goes for the minutes for the players. Mitoma was just all of a sudden benched against Burnley after he was benched against Sheffield United early in the season. You just can't really trust anyone for Brighton, and they just have so many injuries, and they just, what you can expect from Brighton is just goals galore, basically, each way. Like, they create a lot of XG, they create a lot of expected goals conceded against them. It's sad times that Estepinian is still out, because he would have been another fantastic defensive pick, one of those other attacking defenders that we have currently in FPL. So it's a shame that he's out, but Pascal Gross has actually been like the one standout for Brighton lately. He's just been playing a more integral role for Brighton currently. Is looking really good, has gotten a couple of assists, even got a goal, I think, one of the games as well. Just really good for Brighton in general, who have been really inconsistent. As you can see, they lost against Chelsea, they beat Brentford without Mbeumo, obviously, which is a really easy fixture, and then they drew against Burnley. But beating Brentford without Mbeumo and then drawing against Burnley is not really the best either. Like, obviously, it's nice to have 4 points, but it doesn't really say much because those teams are really bad. So yeah, speaking of bad, we move on to Burnley, and the one not so bad fixture is the 5-0 win against Sheffield United, but I think that's also sort of is Sheffield United with hacking bottom. Like, it can't get easier than that when it comes to FPL games, and they were also really affected in that game. As you can see, 5 goals from 1.81 expected goals. That doesn't really happen that often. So yeah, I think Burnley are kind of just another team you should stay away from, most likely. Lost against Wolverhampton, pretty boring game where Wolverhampton ended up being the winners. With Cunha being, again, part of the goals. He assisted Hwang Hee-chan, who scored the winning goal there. And then drew against Brighton as well, where they actually had the lead. Odegaard scored the opening goal for Burnley, but then they conceded pretty late to Adingra. So yeah, Burnley just can't really create much going forward. They don't concede too much defensively, so maybe Taylor is someone you want to have in your team, but he's also going to be suspended now for Game Week 17. He's not someone that you want to buy either. So yeah, hats off to you though if you had him. Hats off, I guess. Lucky you if you had him in Game Week 14 against Sheffield United, because he got the assist and got the clean sheet. So a lot of points for Taylor, who hasn't had that many points this season, but in those 2 game weeks where a lot of people actually used him, he returned plentiful. So anyone that has had them for those 2 game weeks, you should consider yourself lucky, because having Burnley players is not really that lucrative usually, because they're a really bad team in general. I still don't really see that changing anytime soon either. They're really struggling. Then we go on to Chelsea. They're basically just Brighton 2.0. You can just expect a lot of goals, basically, and a lot of just like up and down results. They beat Brighton, obviously, which again isn't saying too much currently, because Brighton are really struggling. And then they just got absolutely hammered in the match against Man United, conceding 4.17 expected goals, which is crazy. We're going to talk more about that when it comes to Man United. But yeah, then they lost now against Everton 2-0 as well. Chelsea, now that they're actually getting good fixtures again, they're starting to struggle again. They're just a really trolly team in general. Like, it's when you really start, or when you're about to start to trust Chelsea, they actually just flop entirely when they have easy fixtures, at least on paper. So yeah, 2 losses against Man United and Everton, not the best, but then again, Everton have actually been pretty good lately, as we'll get to pretty soon as well. But yeah, especially that Man United game was really strange, because Man United just dominated them completely. So yeah, I don't know what it is about Chelsea, but defensively they've really struggled. They've really rotated their team as well. So I think they are there for the taking. If you have an offensive player playing against Chelsea, don't worry about that, because Chelsea defensively have just not been the best currently. Also, obviously, I have to mention Reece James, who once again got injured after like 2 or 3 game weeks of playing time. It's just, you can't really trust Reece James at this point. I had him in 1 week wildcard draft, and I just immediately regretted it. And yeah, I don't think I'll ever like consider him as an option until he's proven for like 5 to 10 games if he can actually play. Because yeah, he's just really struggling with injuries. And obviously also Robert Sanchez now got injured in the past game as well. Don't know how long he's out for, but yeah, Chelsea just really struggle defensively, struggle with conceding a lot of goals. So yeah, definitely a team to target playing against. They do have those really good fixtures now coming up though. So I think Palmer is still a good option. He is the penalty taker. I think he's the stand-up player because of that penalty thing. Chelsea just hunt for penalties all game. They always have plenty of penalty shouts. They usually get a penalty or 2. Or not 2, but they usually get a penalty quite often in games as well. So I think Palmer is still a really good pick for that price that he is. But especially now that we're going to have more money in the bank with all those guys, Salah and Son out and stuff. Maybe it's not as essential as he looked like a week or 2 ago. But yeah, I think Palmer is still a good pick. Other than that, maybe Nkunku when he comes back. If he comes back, he's still like 2 weeks away from being 2 weeks away, it seems like, all the time. Sterling was benched in this past game against Everton as well. They really benched quite a few players against Everton, and it really bit them in the ass because they were just defeated by Everton, basically. So yeah, Chelsea, not too high on them. I think it's a team you can target. Maybe look to see if you need any more players than Palmer, but I just don't trust them defensively. I don't really know who's starting for them defensively either. Probably Colwill, maybe Thiago Silva. Like, it's hard to know who's going to play in defense for them, and they also concede a lot of goals. So probably just stay away from them, apart from Palmer for now at least, until they prove something. Maybe when Nkunku's back, I'll change my tune with Chelsea. But yeah, those good fixtures are not looking so good anymore, because I don't really think Chelsea are looking that good currently in this moment of time. Moving on to Crystal Palace, they are also a team that are looking really weak lately. I've actually put none as the standout FPL option, because I can't really see any Crystal Palace players that are worth considering at this point. Most people are looking to sell their defenders like Guehi and Mitchell, especially, who's injured. Anderson as well, who's really expensive and hasn't really scored or kept up the goal scoring from previously in the season. Offensively, they're just really toothless without the Esse. They can't really create much at all. Haven't really done much, been just about 1 XG per game. They actually created quite a lot against Liverpool, which is interesting as well, but Liverpool, as we'll get to see with them as well, just managed to churn out these results in games where they probably don't deserve it, but that's sort of like a sign of a potential champion as well, so we'll get to that when we talk about Liverpool. But when it comes to Crystal Palace, don't really have to talk about too much, because as long as Eze is out, they don't really have much to offer. And it seems like also the Roy Hodgson sort of like new manager bounce from last season when they had that easier run of fixtures, it's sort of gone past it. But still, we're still waiting to see Michael Olise and Esse play at the same time for an extended period of time as well. So maybe that will change their fortunes if they can get both of those guys healthy at the same time, because they really struggled to do that this season. But for now, Crystal Palace is just basically a team to avoid. They don't really concede that many goals. They don't really score that many goals. So I think it's just like a boring FPL team in general. So that's why I've picked non-FPL options from them. Pretty much. Next up, we have 2 teams that have been really, really impressive lately. Again, this is alphabetical order, so it's not. I haven't put them in side by side for any reason other than the fact that they are side by side when it comes to the alphabet. But let's start with Everton first, obviously. They're first in alphabets out of the two. 3 straight games with clean sheets, just absolutely amazing. All of you guys who had Pickford from the start of the season, you have to feel redeemed now, but you don't get any of the points because although you have sold Pickford, he had 3 straight clean sheets, along with obviously Branthwaite and Tarkowski. So Everton have just been feasting in general. They also beaten Newcastle 3-0. They beaten Chelsea 2-0. Doucouré has looked amazing. McNeil has looked fantastic as well. Another great option for a really cheap price. Calvert-Lewin has had so many huge chances and just missed. It seems like strikers in general this past few weeks have just been missing really easy chances, apart from one striker who we'll get to with Fulham. But yeah, Calvert-Lewin is one of them. Someone really touched him. Beto actually scored a really nice goal as well when he came on against Newcastle. That was really nice to see. He is, I think, an underrated player. I think he just got a lot of stick after he came to Everton and didn't get that playing time. I still think there's a player in there somewhere. I think he looked really impressive at the start of the season, and yeah, I think he's going to come good as well. I said this about Everton at the start of the season as well. I didn't really buy into them going down, and now even after the 10-point deduction, they're again above the relegation zone, which tells you something about the lesser teams in the Premier League this season, but it also tells you something about just how good Everton are this season. They would have been on 24 points now if it wasn't for that 10-point deduction, and they're just looking really good, especially defensively with Branthwaite, who I want to just highlight again as a standout defensive pick. He's just really transformed the defense with him coming in for Michael Keane, replacing one of the worst defenders in the league with one of the best up-and-coming defenders in the league. That has really changed fortunes for Everton, who've also had some nice performances as well from Mykolenko, for example, who's been really struggling since he came to Everton. But this season, he's actually been pretty good. So Everton are just looking better and better under Sean Dyche, and credits to Sean Dyche. I didn't really have much faith in him as an Everton manager. I know my FPL Scope podcast co-host Kevin as well, who's an Everton fan, didn't really have much faith in Sean Dyche. He wanted sacked a couple of weeks ago, but as we know with Kevin and managers, he is sometimes a bit too trigger happy, and we'll get to that with the next team, which is Fulham, because Kevin just absolutely does not like Marco Silva at all. But you just have to give Marco Silva credit, man. He almost had 3 straight wins in these 3 matches now, against Liverpool, Forest, and West Ham, and 2 back-to-back 5-0 wins against Nottingham Forest and West Ham. Absolutely insane. They've just been really effective. As you can see, 2.52 expected goals against Nottingham Forest, 5 goals. 2.37 expected goals against West Ham, 5 goals. They've just been really clinical. And the man at the forefront there is Raul Jimenez, who's just been scoring left and right and has looked like his old self, basically. Like what he looked like for Wolverhampton, just even more explosive. So I don't know what to make of Jimenez. If he's actually like for real back, has he gotten his confidence back, and is he back to being that same player? Because he isn't that old. Like, he shouldn't really be that bad. I think it's just mostly been like a confidence issue. He has really struggled when it comes to like his head injury, obviously, which really messed him up for quite a while. But now he's scoring headers left and right. He's just looking like a really good player. And now he's like sort of stepped into that Mitrovic role. And we know Mitrovic was like a pretty decent striker for like 6.5, 7.0. And Jimenez is what, 5.3, 5.4? Maybe he's a sneaky option as well. Like, they have some easy fixtures coming up against Burnley, for example. So maybe Jimenez is another striker option. I think strikers are really, or forwards are really interesting currently, because there are a lot of underperforming forwards, as we'll see with especially Liverpool and Newcastle coming up. But there are so many like interesting picks as well when it comes to forward positions. So Jimenez might be one of them, and Fulham in general just look really good. Iwobi has been really fantastic for them. Andres Pereira has stepped up and been sort of like the same player that we remember from last season. Willian all of a sudden is fantastic after like he was really like, it seemed like he was washed up at Arsenal, and now that he's back at Fulham, he's just really amazing. He's on penalties as well, obviously, even though he's like slightly injured now. So yeah, Fulham just have a lot of fun, interesting differentials defensively as well. He have 2 clean sheets in a row now with the 5-0 wins. Leno might be a pretty good pick. Castagna in defense might be a good pick. Just a lot of like interesting picks from Fulham. It's not like, don't really trust Fulham at this point. I don't really, especially, I've been really hard on Fulham this whole season, but just got to give credit to Marco Silva, because Fulham are definitely cooking up something that I did not expect to see from them this season. So yeah, hats off to Fulham as well. Just really, really impressive in general, and they completely destroyed my personal team, West Ham as well. So sad to see as a West Ham fan, but pretty happy for him, as to be honest. Like, he deserves it after all the stuff that he's been through with his head injury and stuff. I've written him off this season as well. Like, I thought Vinicius was the better striker so far this season for Fulham. But Jimenez has just now finally found his form, and it's really nice to see. And yeah, he's just a fun differential pick, I think, for anyone that wants to go with that. If you have faith in Fulham, I think maybe we should start having some faith in Fulham, because they've proven us wrong for about 2 years now, and yeah, I might be done writing them off as like a really bad team, because they do look pretty good. Even against Liverpool, they could have had a result there. They had 3-2 pretty late in that game, and then they conceded 2 pretty late goals to Liverpool, who just managed to get wins somehow. But yeah, Fulham, really impressive. Really impressed by what I've seen from them in general. Marco Silva deserves a lot of praise in general. Next up, speaking of Liverpool, we have Liverpool again. Liverpool haven't been like too impressive, and mostly that's down to Darwin Núñez just being a really poor striker. He's just been really bad at converting chances. But Liverpool, they just managed to scrape wins here and there. 4-3 against Fulham, like I just mentioned. 2 really late goals. Trent Alexander-Arnold, who's been the standout player for them the last 3 game weeks, has gotten a lot of points lately in general. Since like game week 9, I think he's just been like by far the best goal scoring defender in the game. Back to his old ways pretty much. And he's just pretty much gone under the radar as well. I think that's really interesting, because you all get caught up into the template, like the FPL content creator sort of list of players that you could have potentially. But Trent Alexander-Arnold is someone that if you had him these past few weeks, he's just been absolutely fantastic. I think I said, at least to my credit, I said back when like the no Haaland drafts were like brought into the fray in like game week 8 and game week 10. I said if you don't go with Haaland, you definitely need to go with Trent, because you have that extra money now. You might as well go with Trent, who's still a really good option, even though he's really expensive. Yeah, gets clean sheets here and there. He gets goals obviously here and there, and gets assists here and there. Really nice free kick he had as well against Fulham. Just really good goals in general in that game. Alexis McAllister with a peach of a goal as well. So yeah, Liverpool, they have looked sort of impressive, but at the same time they've also been pretty like just scraping through with a couple wins here and there. But yeah, they're again another team like Arsenal who are looking to get back into form and actually be major title contenders, because there is a reigning champion that are kind of struggling at the moment, as we'll get to pretty soon. But yeah, Liverpool really impressive. Darwin not so much. Salah continues to play really well and get goals here and there. Yeah, he's just essential until he leaves for African Cup of Nations, and then you want him back probably again after he's back from AFCON as well. So yeah, Trent really good as well. Darwin not so much. Other than that as well, not too much from Liverpool. Chimikas for now is looking decent until Robertson is back as well. But yeah, Liverpool again, just a really good team, and definitely one of the title contenders this season. Luton is definitely not a title contender, and as you can see, they have 3 straight losses. And even though all 3 have been sort of close-ish, especially the Arsenal game and the City game, Luton have not impressed at all. If you look from the expected goals and expected goals conceded, 1.07 expected goals in these last 3 games. And 7.34 expected goals conceded. They've been really lucky not to concede more. So yeah, I don't really know about Luton in general. Should mention though, Adebayo has been really good up front for them. Carlton Morris, who looked like he was nailed, like the talisman for Luton, he hasn't really played that much lately. Ogbene has been pretty good for Chidozie Ogbene has been pretty good for Luton, and Elijah Adebayo as well, proven his worth. Alfred Doughty though is the one that I've actually mentioned this summary as the best FPL option, because he had 2 assists against Arsenal, 2 set pieces. He's just a really good set piece taker in general, so he's sort of like a poor man's Trent, if you wanna say it like that. But Luton obviously can't really keep many clean sheets. Even at home, they haven't really done much lately. But to be fair, they have faced Arsenal and City these past 2 matches, so maybe I shouldn't be too harsh on them when it comes to the expected goals conceded and stuff. And they didn't only concede 1.40 expected goals conceded against City, but that was City without Haaland as well. So it's a bit of an asterisk there as well. But yeah, Luton just don't really look too impressive. I wouldn't really get any players from Luton, most likely. Maybe Kabore for like a cheap buck if you want a backup defender. But other than that, not really any standout players from Luton. But yeah, they've had some tough fixtures, but they haven't really... I mean, they've coped well in terms of having close games. Really unlucky not to get any points. They've shown this whole season against Spurs, against Liverpool, against Arsenal, against City, against Chelsea, against Man United. Like, they always keep it really close, and then they lose towards the end. West Ham as well, to just mention my team, my personal favorite team amongst those big 6 teams. But yeah, European champions after all. But yeah, Luton, pretty much to stay away. You can't really target them too much, but they're still a team to target, I think, currently as well. They do have a really weak squad, but I think they're putting up a nice fight, and I think they might actually keep their place this season. It just remains to be seen who's that 3rd team to go down, because I think Burnley and Sheffield United are definitely going down, and Luton might be going down with them, but we'll see what happens with them. Next up, we have the two Manchester teams, starting with Manchester City. And obviously, the big talking point right now is Erling Haaland, who is out with an injury, was out in Game Week 16 against Luton. They're also blanking in Game Week 18. And now that there's doubts about him in Game Week 17, I think there are more and more doubts each day now. I'm going to talk more about this week in the videos this week as well with Man City. But I think for sure that Haaland is going to be out for Game Week 17. I think it's pretty certain. It seems like every single Haaland member, even his girlfriend, his dad, have all sold him for a hit this past game week in Fantasy Premier League. So I think they know something is up. I think they know that he's out until at least the blank in Game Week 18. He's probably back for Game Week 19, potentially, maybe. But yeah, in between that, they have their Club World Cup. We'll get to see if he plays there. We'll get to see if he plays against Crystal Palace. Maybe it's just a ruse. Maybe he's going to be back for Crystal Palace. But I think it's looking pretty bad for Palace. And that means you can sell him. And that means you have a lot of good options. And one of them is Alvarez, who was sort of discarded, put to the side by many of us, me included. I sold him for Darwin in Game Week 14, I think, or Game Week 13, when there were rumors that Alvarez wasn't going to start. But then he started after all. So he's now going to be the starting striker and take penalties for them. And that didn't really prove to be worth too many points against Luton. He only got 1 assist, but I think he's going to be really good in that role for Game Week 17 and potentially Game Week 19. But maybe not the best option, but especially seeing as Kevin De Bruyne is going to be back pretty soon as well. He's going to be back around the new year. So around Game Week 20, Game Week 21, he might be the person that most of us move to when we need to sell Salah in Game Week 21 or need to sell Son in Game Week 21. So De Bruyne might just be a de facto replacement there if he's back ready to play. They've also missed Doku lately. Should mention that they've really struggled in general. 1 win, 1 draw, 1 loss. They're just barely scraped by a win against Luton. Got destroyed by Aston Villa, to be fair, which should have been more than 1-0. And we're kind of unlucky to only get 1 point against Spurs, especially with that shocking referee decision where Haaland put Grealish through on goal and the ref just blew the whistle for a free kick when he definitely should have given the advantage. So City have been sort of unlucky. They've also sort of lacked a couple players. Obviously, De Bruyne is huge. It's been vital for them this whole season that he's been out. That's been a huge loss for them. Doku being out lately as well has also affected them negatively, I think. So this is around the time where we usually expect City to like get into gear and get those wins and get those really good performances in, but they just haven't so far. Maybe they need to get the Club World Cup out of the way and get De Bruyne back. Maybe that will be the run for them. So yeah, stay tuned for that, I guess. But for now, not looking too good, especially with Haaland out. Wouldn't really consider that many players apart from maybe Alvarez. For now, he's also like a decent bit part player until De Bruyne is back at least. Even then, he might still play. But with De Bruyne back, Alvarez is going to be more a bench type of player because Alvarez has been playing in the De Bruyne role this whole season. So yeah, I think City are pretty much a team that you can stay away from for a couple of game weeks, and then you can jump back on them when African Cup of Nations and Asian Cup is coming around to get Son and Salah out of the way as well. So yeah, City kind of struggling lately, but I think as always they're going to turn it around. And yeah, that's also the other thing with City. Maybe now that they've had a couple bad results in a row, maybe Guardiola will look to switch up some things. Maybe he'll do some changes to the team. Maybe, I don't know, some players might just come into the fray. Maybe Rico Lewis starts playing quite a bit of matches and he's just listed as a defender. Maybe he becomes essential at some point. Maybe Stones comes back and he actually stays fit for a while and he can be a vital part for City turning it around as well. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens with City. But I think for these next few game weeks, with Haaland potentially out for Game Week 17, the Club World Cup making them have a blank in Game Week 18, and then a pretty tough fixture against Everton in Game Week 19, I think, Everton away. Those are some tricky fixtures for City, but after that, or tricky weeks at least for City, but after that, maybe they'll get into gear again, I think. So for now, just hold out, take a look at what happens with them in the Club World Cup and stuff, and then jump on them if you have the chance in Game Week 20, Game Week 21, I think is the best options for Man City. When it comes to Man United, they are also a team that are kind of really tough to predict. They've had 2 pretty clear losses against Newcastle and Bournemouth. They were the much worse side against Newcastle. Newcastle kind of dominated them, even though they only beat them 1-0. Anthony Gordon, as always, at home, fantastic, but we're not talking about Newcastle just yet. We're talking about Man United. Then against Chelsea, they actually looked really, really good. 4.17 expected goals, which is really fantastic. They put Rashford out of the side. Garnacho looked really amazing. McTominay with the 2 goals. McTominay has really stepped up, and he's playing 90 minutes every game. That's why he's sort of more an interesting pick currently, I think, after these 3 games than Garnacho, because Garnacho has that sort of rotation risk to him, but McTominay is going to play most games, and it seems like he's going to play in that offensive role as well. He's had some pretty good underlying stats lately, and he's not really that expensive either in FPL. I think it's like 4.7, 4.8, so McTominay for sure is definitely someone to keep an eye out for, but Man United in general just haven't looked that good. They've been really erratic. They did look really good in the team against another team that is really erratic and up and down in Chelsea. But against Bournemouth, who are really good currently, they struggled to do much and conceded 3 goals. And against Newcastle, they really couldn't create much either. So yeah, they're still struggling. They're getting some players back from injury. But in general, don't really think there are any like huge standout options for Man United. Rashford is out cold entirely. We obviously know the Sancho situation. Antony actually looked pretty good in this past game, especially against Chelsea. He looked pretty good. But I don't really think he's an FPL option either. So Man United is pretty much a stay away. Maybe Maguire for 4.3 or whatever he is still. He might be an option as well. He was the player of the month after all this past month in November. So yeah. But they have had a lot of clean sheets, but they haven't really impressed defensively either, as we've seen in the Champions League especially. So can't really trust many Man United players currently either. So yeah, let's just move on from them as well. Next up, we have Newcastle. And they have been really up and down, mostly down the past few game weeks. And they're just looking really tired in general, I think. They've had so many matches. They don't really have the biggest squad to deal with those matches. They had some injuries now to both Botman for a long while, Dan Burn for a long while, and now Nick Pope as well. So 3 major injuries to their defense is going to make things worse for them defensively. And that's what they've shown the last 2 games, especially conceding 3.36 expected goals against Everton and 3.81 expected goals against Spurs, who just absolutely ran them ragged with Son, especially at the left wing, just terrorizing Trippier, who got a yellow card and is now suspended for giving 17. So Trippier, I think, for me, it's a huge advantage for me, who has a wildcard left, who can wildcard in game week 20. I can just get Trippier in for game week 18 and 19 against, Luton and Nottingham Forest, those 2 games. Getting Trippier for those 2 fixtures with the money in the bank from Haaland and stuff. And then I can just ship him out for the wildcard in game week 20 when they have 3 really tough matches. I think they have Arsenal, City, and Aston Villa away in 3 fixtures in a row, or Liverpool even. Liverpool, City, and Aston Villa away or something. So they have some really tough fixtures coming up soon as well, and they're just looking really tired in general. Isak has also been a major letdown lately. He's been getting a lot of chances and just missing them. While Wilson has been out, and Wilson is now back fit. So again, we have that rotating nightmare with Wilson and Isak playing every other game. Can't really trust either of them, really. The player that you can trust from Newcastle, though, so far this season at least, has been Anthony Gordon, who's just been absolutely fantastic at home, especially. He's really close to scoring pretty early against Spurs. The game could have been looking pretty differently if he had scored, if they had scored that early chance where he passed it into Isak, who missed. But Gordon has looked really good, especially at home. So with 2 really good home fixtures in the next 3, he is the standout FPL option for sure. He's definitely someone that I wish that I had brought in this past game week, especially seeing as Haaland now is injured and I don't really need the money that I saved from going with Hwang rather than Gordon. But yeah, I think Gordon is really a pick. But defensively, not so much. Maybe against Luton and Forest, I think I'm going to take a punt on Trippier myself because I have the wildcard. But seeing as I have really tough fixtures after that, there's not really that much value in getting Trippier if you don't have him already. If you have him, for sure, just stick with him for those 2 games and then sell him afterwards. Livramento is also someone you should mention for 4.3. I think he's going to be the left back for Newcastle for basically the foreseeable future. I think he's going to take that spot from Dan Burn. He's just really good, especially defensively. These past 3 games, I think he's pretty secure in that place as well. I think Trippier is going to play on the right and Livramento on the left most game weeks. Maybe Lewis Hall will get some chances on the left. Maybe Livramento will get some chances on the right as well. Maybe that's probably what's going to happen now and then this next game where Trippier is out with the suspension. So yeah, he's also someone you should mention, or again, I say you should mention, you should take note of. And also Botman seems to be getting pretty close to a return. But yeah, Dubravka is also someone that a lot of people brought in, but now there are some doubts about him, potentially having a shoulder injury himself, potentially Newcastle looking for a goalkeeper in January. So he's looking more like a short-term option than what we were hoping for lately. So yeah. Just wait and see with Dubravka. But if he is the starting goalkeeper for Newcastle for the rest of the season, basically, he's going to be really good value at 4.0. But if not, if they get a new goalkeeper, obviously you have to move along with the new goalkeeper and stay away from Dubravka, I guess. But yeah, Let's move on to Nottingham Forest, who are another team that are really struggling because of injuries, and mostly that's down to Taiwo Aveni being injured. He's sort of been like their focal point in attack. They looked really good when he's been fit. They haven't looked that good when he's been out injured, and they're just really struggling without him, basically, especially offensively. They haven't really created much. They're still like solid defensively-ish, at least, especially at home. But they did concede 5 goals against Fulham, so we know that they can concede a lot of goals as well. But against both Everton and against Wolverhampton, they didn't really concede that many chances. So yeah, defensively they are decent. I think Harry Toffolo is definitely the guy to mention, who is listed as a defender in FPL, plays as a wing back, is really attacking, scored a goal against Wolverhampton as well. Had 2 assists not too long ago as well, so I think he's a decent player for 4.4, but Nottingham Forest are also just a team in general that you just want to stay clear of, basically. Another team sort of like Crystal Palace, who are like defensively tight-ish, defensively sound-ish. So you can't really expect too many of those 5-0 results as we saw against Fulham in other games. But yeah, it's going to be more low-scoring games pretty much for Forest. And yeah, not really many players to consider offensively. Even Gibbs White has not been that impressive this season, especially without Avani for most of the season. Elanga has had some spurts and stuff, but you don't really want to go with any Nottingham Forest offensive players, really. Even Chris Wood as well, who was like a slightly like favorite pick of people after Avani got injured, but Chris Wood is just not playing regularly enough to be a standout option for them. So yeah, Nottingham Forest don't really have to mention too many players for Nottingham Forest either that are worth considering. So let's move on to the next team. So next up we have Sheffield United. Speaking of teams that we don't really have to consider too much, I just listed McAtee as a standout FPL option from this past 3 game weeks because he scored a really, really nice goal against Brentford. Yeah, that was enough for a win for Sheffield United, a much needed win for them because they are just trying to stave off that bottom prize of being the worst team of all time in Premier League history. Because yeah, I think they just want to get past that Derby points and that's it, and get past the lowest point total in history from Derby. Was it 12 points or something that they had? Sheffield United are close to getting to there as well, at least halfway through the season. And they're probably going to do it, especially now that they've changed their manager. They lost 5-0 against Burnley, lost 2-0 against Liverpool. They changed their manager before the Liverpool game, I think. And they're actually looking a bit better now. They created a couple of chances against Liverpool as well. And they actually got the win against Brentford, so the manager change, it seems to have worked a little bit. They gotten Chris Wilder back, the man that brought them up the original time into the Premier League. So they're looking a bit better now, but it's still only been 2 games against Liverpool, which is impressive to keep them from creating too many chances. But then against Brentford without Mbuemo, which is a pretty easy match in general. So don't really know if they are like a decent-ish team now or not, but they do have such a weak squad that I think they're still going to be a team that you can definitely target. So Watkins, captain game week 18, at home to Sheffield United, I think seems like a really good fixture. They have a really good... there's a team that has a home fixture against them in Game Week 20 as well that are a pretty good team to target as well. I can't remember off the top of my head which team that is, but I still think Sheffield United are a team to target, but maybe they won't be having as many like 5-0 and 8-0 type of losses as they did under Heckingbottom anymore, Sheffield United. So yeah, they're looking slightly better with a new manager, but they're still a team to target when it comes to playing against them. When it comes to players from them, can't really go with anyone really. Maybe Archer as like a backup striker. He's actually looking decent the last few game weeks as well. In terms of at least his overall play. FPL, not so much. He doesn't really get many points. He had that one game against Everton this earlier in the season, and that's pretty much it for him so far. He had another game where he had like 9 points on my bench, I remember, because he's just been on my bench forever. But yeah, Archer is like a nice cut price attacker, but I think 3 forwards is the way to go forward in this game as well. So I don't think Archer is going to be that interesting either going forward. So I said the word forward several times now. So let's move forward to Spurs instead, which is a much more interesting team when it comes to FPL because they do play with like a pretty set 11 when it's at least when they have a healthy team. But yeah, they just play really attacking football, and they've just been like, they were kind of lucky to get the 3-3 against City, and then they were really unlucky to lose against West Ham. I can say that as a West Ham fan. Really should have taken a bigger lead early on against West Ham, and then West Ham just punished some stupid mistakes from Spurs. But then against Newcastle again, they showed their worth, and Richarlison back as a striker really helped them as well. He's another player you can actually mention as a standout FPL option. I couldn't choose really between Pedro Porro and Son, because Son has basically, after blanking 3 games in a row not too long ago, people were starting to lose faith in Son, but he just posted really good underlying stats in general, and now he's proven his worth by far in these 3 past game weeks. So yeah, he blanked in game week 13, 12, and 11, but now he's just been really good, scoring 2 goals or 1 goal and 1 assist, I think, against City. And then the 2 goals and 1 assist, or whatever it was, against Newcastle, getting 17 points against Newcastle, which is really, really fantastic. So Son looks really good. And Pedro Porro is like the standout defensive option. He's so attacking. He's like a modern day Trent Alexander-Arnold, I guess. Just providing a lot of interesting crosses and stuff, especially now with Maddison out until the new year, around game 21, game 22. It's when Maddison is coming back. But until then, Porro is going to be on set pieces, and he's really attacking from open play as well. So Porro is a fantastic option in defense. Son is a fantastic option in midfield, and Richarlison is a fantastic option as a striker, but he's listed as a midfielder for 6.6. And especially when Son goes to the Asian Cup in game 21, maybe you just go straight to Richarlison, who's going to be playing as a striker, most likely going to be on pens, especially when Maddison is out and Son is out. So Richarlison might be like a nice 3-week punt as well, potentially soon. So I think Spurs are really interesting in terms of the fact that they play the same players all the time, and they play really attacking football, and might get a clean sheet here or there. They didn't manage to get the clean sheet in the end against Newcastle, which was really sad for those of us with Udogie or with Pedro Porro. But in general, I think Spurs just look like they're just playing their own game, and it's sort of working most of the time. But it's just really high risk, high reward with Spurs. It seems like it can go either way, really. But they are still a really good team, and yeah, I have a lot of faith in Postecoglou still, even though they had some struggles lately. But yeah, they had really a lot of luck early in the season. They've had a lot of like unlucky moments these past few game weeks. But I still think it's a team, especially offensively, to have players from. So yeah, I think Spurs are a decent team to have players from as well. Next up, and finally, we have the last 2 teams in the Premier League, and we have West Ham, who finally got their comeuppance against Fulham, losing 5-0. I know as a West Ham fan myself that West Ham have sort of been scraping past and getting some pretty lucky results, including the one against Spurs, like I mentioned. 1-1 against Palace is a really weak result at home. In Europa League, they've been really lucky to get a couple points late, with Souček scoring some winning goals towards the end of the matches. They beat Nottingham Forest that way as well, and had another game in the Premier League against Burnley, was it? Where they had that late win as well. Had a lot of lucky wins, West Ham, and they don't really look that good, especially defensively. They look really bad defensively because they conceded a lot of chances and conceded a lot of goals. But offensively as well, without Antonio up front, they're just lacking something. They're lacking some firepower. I don't think Bowen or Kudus works as well as a striker as they do on the right wing. Kind of a big conundrum there for West Ham, with 2 of their best players playing in the same position, or their best position is the same position. Paqueta is playing like wide left as well, which is not good for him. He's also one of the better players for West Ham. There's just a lot of midfielders to choose from as well, and they just can't seem to find the right combination. David Moyes sorta under the microscope currently, because West Ham are just not performing well in terms of what they do on the pitch. But when it comes to points, can't really argue. In the quarterfinal in the Carabao Cup, or the League Cup as we call it, they're through, at least in the Europa League group stage. They might get the win in the group as well and go just straight to the round of 16 or the quarterfinals. I can't remember. I think round of 16 that they go through to. So they're doing well in terms of results, but in terms of general play, just really lacking a striker option currently. So yeah, not too sold on West Ham players in general. And as you can see, they concede a lot of goals and concede a lot of expected goals conceded as well. So they're definitely a team you can target when you have offensive players playing against West Ham. You know you're probably going to get some points. And defensively, Areola has been injured lately. Maybe you're looking to sell him, but like I said, with Dubravka, maybe Dubravka is not the long-term option you need either anyway. So maybe if you have Areola and Dubravka, maybe you should look to get in a new goalkeeper. But I think goalkeepers in general, just basically it's not worth it really to make transfers. Maybe if you have like a luxury transfer or something, or if you're really in a pinch, then maybe you can sell those guys. But yeah, personally, I'm hoping that Areola gets sold a little bit before he comes back from injury, and I can pick him up for like 4.0 on a wildcard in ME20. But yeah, in general, West Ham can't really trust them defensively. And the one interesting thing about the Fulham game, I think, is the fact that they sort of changed their formation towards the end of the match, I think, with playing with 3 centre-backs in Mavropanos, Suma, and Agerd. So they might be changing into that, but at the same time, Agerd is going to go to the African Cup of Nations as well as Benrahma, as well as Kudus, and another player that I'm forgetting, Cornet, who has been forgotten at West Ham as well. So yeah, West Ham pretty much just stay away, especially now with AFCON coming up as well. It's going to hurt the team even more, and I think they're going to have some really tough couple weeks now coming up pretty soon. So yeah, West Ham, pretty much just stay away, I guess. And then finally, Wolverhampton are kind of like a pretty efficient team. They do have some really nice like parts where they play really well. The goal they scored against Nottingham Forest, for example, was a really well taken goal. Cunha has been absolutely fantastic, scored a really nice goal against Arsenal, got an assist against Burnley, and then scored again against Nottingham Forest. I think he has 5 straight games with attacking returns now, Cunha. So he's another one of those interesting forward differentials that I've talked about earlier. Hye-chan Wang, or Hwang Hye-chan, however you want to name him. It's also been interesting lately. He's been scoring a couple goals. Obviously, now that I brought him in for Game Week 16, he didn't score, but yeah, he's still also looking pretty good, and he's also potentially the penalty taker for Wolves. He took on a penalty that they've had this season, so yeah, he's also a decent option. Defensively, they looked pretty good as well. Defensively, Arsenal, they really struggled. Ødegaard was amazing in that game, like I mentioned in the start of this video, which is 50 minutes ago. But yeah, defensively they look pretty good. They have Dawson, obviously. Ait-Nouri has been injured lately, which is bad for them. So yeah, they're pretty solid defensively. They're pretty efficient when it comes to scoring goals. They're still waiting for Pedro Neto to come back. He's going to come back probably in like Game Week 19, 20-ish range. He's going to be a big help for them. He was their best player at the start of the season, and he's going to help them score a couple more goals as well. So yeah, I think Wolverhampton are an interesting team, and definitely a team you can jump on when they have easier fixtures. So yeah, you just got to pay attention to that, I guess. But that's pretty much it. I've gone through all 20 teams in the Premier League and what I feel about them currently, especially after these past 3 game weeks in the short span of just 7 days with a lot of matches in general. Haven't been able to watch them all, haven't been able to watch the highlights even of all. But I've tried to keep tabs on all the teams and obviously looked up the stats and all that stuff. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this content, this video. I hope you liked the graphics that I had for this. I think this is what I'm usually going to do when I have like 3 game weeks in the span of 1 week. I'm probably going to have the same format where I just talk about all 3 game weeks in total rather than talking about them individually as I usually do each week. So yeah, tell me if you liked that. Tell me if you liked the video and in general all the things that I talked about. I'm going to have some more videos coming up. I'm going to have like a huge wildcard draft sort of guide, like what I'm looking to do with my wildcard. I'm going to do the wildcard in Game Week 20 most likely, and have some pretty good interesting things I can do up until that point and beyond that as well. So stay tuned for that. Subscribe if you haven't already, and that's pretty much it for me. Thank you for watching this video. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.